When all were seated, and each one had been offered a cup of tea, the general explained lengthily and minutely what was the affair in hand. Now, gentlemen, we must decide how we mean to act against the rebels. Shall it be offensively or defensively? Each way has its disadvantages and its advantages. Offensive warfare offers more hope of the enemy being speedily crushed, but a defensive war is surer and less dangerous. Consequently, we will collect the votes according to the proper order, that is to say, begin first consulting the juniors in respect of rank. Now, Mr. Ensign, continued he, addressing me, be so good as to give us your opinion. I rose, and after having depicted in a few words Pugachev and his band, I declared that the usurper was not in a state to resist disciplined troops. My opinion was received by the civil officials with visible discontent. They saw in it the headstrong impertinence of youth. A murmur arose, and I distinctly heard said, half aloud, the words, "beardless boy." The general turned towards me, and smilingly said, Mr. Ensign, the early votes in a council of war are generally for offensive measures. Now we will proceed. Mr. College Counselor, tell us your opinion. The little old man in the watered silk coat made haste to swallow his third cup of tea, which he had mixed with a good help of rum. I think, Your Excellency, said he, we must neither act on the defensive nor yet on the offensive. How so, Mr. Counselor? Replied the general, astounded. There is nothing else open to us in tactics, one must act either on the defensive or the offensive. Your Excellency, endeavor to suborn. Your opinion is very judicious, the act of corruption is one admitted by the rules of war, and we will profit by your counsel. We might offer for the rascal's head 70 or even 100 rubles, and take them from the secret funds. And then, interrupted the head of the customs, I'm a Kirghiz instead of a college counselor if these robbers do not deliver up their ataman, chained hand and foot. We will think of it, and talk of it again, rejoined the general. Still, in any case, we must also take military measures. Gentlemen, Give your votes in proper order. Everyone's opinion was contrary to mine. Those present vied with each other about the untrustworthiness of the troops, the uncertainty of success, the necessity of prudence, and so forth. All were of opinion that it was better to stay behind a strong wall, their safety assured by cannon, than to tempt the fortune of war in the open field. At last, when all the opinions had been given, the general shook the ashes out of his pipe and made the following speech. Gentlemen, I must tell you, for my part, I am entirely of the opinion of our friend the ensign, for this opinion is based on the precepts of good tactics, in which nearly always offensive movements are preferable to defensive ones. Here he paused a moment and filled his pipe. My self-love was triumphant, and I cast a proud glance at the civil officials who were whispering among themselves, with an air of disquiet and discontent. But, gentlemen, resumed the general, with a sigh, and puffing out a cloud of smoke, I dare not take upon myself such a great responsibility, when the safety is in question of the provinces entrusted to my care by Her Imperial Majesty, my gracious sovereign. Therefore I see I am obliged to abide by the advice of the majority, which has ruled that prudence as well as reason declares that we should await in the town the siege which threatens us, and that we should defeat the attacks of the enemy by the force of artillery, and, if the possibility present itself, by well-directed sorties. It was now the turn of the officials to look mockingly at me. The council broke up. I could not help deploring the weakness of the honest soldier who, against his own judgment, had decided to abide by the counsel of ignorant and inexperienced people. Several days after this memorable council of war, Pugachev, true to his word, approached Orenburg. From the top of the city wall I took note of the army of the rebels, and it seemed to me that their number had increased tenfold since the last assault I had witnessed. They had also artillery, which had been taken from the little forts which had fallen before Pugachev. As I recollected the decision of the Council of War, I foresaw a long imprisonment within the walls of Orenburg, and I was ready to cry with vexation. Far be from me any intention of describing the siege of Orenburg, which belongs to history, and not to a family memoir. In a few words, therefore, I shall say that in consequence of the bad arrangements of the authorities, the siege was disastrous for the inhabitants, who were forced to suffer hunger and privation of all kinds. Life at Orenburg was becoming unendurable, each one awaited in anxiety the fate that should befall him. All complained of the famine, which was, indeed, awful. The inhabitants ended by becoming accustomed to the shells falling on their houses. Even the assaults of Pugachev no longer excited great disturbance. I was dying of ennui. The time passed but slowly. I could not get any letter from Belogorsk, for all the roads were blocked, and the separation from Marya became unbearable. My only occupation consisted in my military rounds. Thanks to Pugachev, I had a pretty good horse, with which I shared my scanty rations. Every day I passed beyond the ramparts, and I went and fired away against the scouts of Pugachev. In these sort of skirmishes the rebels generally got the better of us, as they had plenty of food and were capitally mounted. Our thin, starved cavalry was unable to stand against them. Sometimes our famished infantry took the field, but the depth of the snow prevented action with any success against the flying cavalry of the enemy. The artillery thundered vainly from the height of the ramparts, and in the field guns could not work because of the weakness of the worn-out horses. This is how we made war, and this is what the officials of Orenburg called prudence and foresight. One day, when we had succeeded in dispersing and driving before us a rather numerous band, I came up with one of the hindmost Cossacks, and I was about to strike him with my Turkish saber when he took off his cap and cried, "Good day, Petr Andreevich, how is your health?" I recognized our Uryadnik. I cannot say how glad I was to see him. "Good day, Maximich," said I, "is it long since you left Belogorsk?" "No, not long, my little father, Petr Andreevich, I only came back yesterday."